Alrighty, so I've now had the DJI Avata for just about 3 months. I got it at the very beginning of August before it was ever released. And I had about, I want to say about 2.5, 3 weeks of time before everybody else to go ahead and test it and put it through its paces and create the videos. Now, what I haven't done is giving any sort of final say on the Avata as far as recommendations, my thoughts and opinions. I've done series of videos testing various aspects on this, but in this video, I'm just gonna give you either a thumbs up or thumbs down on what I think about the DJI Avata in more of a condensed video review long-term. Let's get started. What's good, everybody? Ken here, you're watching OriginaldoBo. Today's video, we do my long-term review of the DJI Avata. Now, if you've never seen any of my reviews, I just want to give you fair warning. I do not hold back. There is going to be profanity in this video. I just sort of speak whatever comes to mind. My channel is not designed for kids, not designed for easily offended adults, which there seems to be a lot of those nowadays. This is just a no bullshit conversation, as if I was sitting here talking to a group of friends and they asked me what I thought about this after having owned it for 90 days. So that is what I'm going to give you. There will be timestamps down below where you can just sort of jump around if there's something you're interested in or you're on the fence. Just hit the timestamp and you can check it all out. All right, let's jump into it with the build quality. All right, so the build quality of this drone absolutely sort of shocked me. When I first got this in my hands and I saw that it was made out of plastic, I was sort of bummed. I thought to myself, I'm like, oh, here we go again. We've got another DJI FPV drone on our hands. I have personally destroyed 3 DJI FPV drones. I'm actually on my 4th one now, and I'm hoping not to destroy that one. However, the DJI FPV drone was the fucking Humpty Dumpty of drones. If it fell from about 3 feet high, chances are you could break something on that thing because that's just how fragile it was. It was like they thought a good idea was to make the arms hollow. I don't know who designed that, but holy shit, it broke super easy. Now, with the DJI Avata, that is not the case. I will tell you, I've taken several crashes with this drone, and I have not personally had too many problems unless I was intending on breaking that. So you see I'm holding 2 Avatas. Technically, I have 3 Avatas, one from DJI, one from Pyro Drone, but wait, the one from DroneWorks is missing. Now, the one from DroneWorks I was using as sort of a test bed to test these duck guards. And what I was looking to do was to see if having these ribbed riders on here would do anything as far as impact resistance. And well, I found out very quickly that this one still survived, but the one from DroneWorks is no longer with me. I'm actually in the process of fixing that. So hitting a tree at about 40 miles an hour will cause significant damage. I am trying to find the ESC unit for it. So if anybody knows where I can buy the ESC or has a wrecked Avata that they don't want to fix, that want to sell the ESC, let me know. I'll definitely buy that from you. All right, but these 2 here have survived several crashes. And I will tell you that you can crash this thing pretty hard, lightly. It doesn't matter. It's going to be able to handle most anything you throw at it. It's not something that I'm worried at if it falls out of a tree, like 20 feet out of a tree, that it's going to break apart. I have never once had that issue. Even falling onto hard concrete, the worst that has happened when I didn't fly it with my ribbed riders is that I get some scuffs on the props. Not a big deal. It's only cosmetic, but it's never really affected the way it's flown. The other thing is people have asked me, well, would it be a good idea to take these prop guards off? And the answer is no, because if you look at these prop guards, there is ventilation in here in certain points. And what it does, it is actually funneling air around the flight controller. So these props are in this array on the prop guards are actually creating a fan to keep that air unit cool. So you definitely want to fly this with the prop guards on, even though in some instances it's been proven that it does fly better with the prop guards off. You do want to keep them on there because it does allow it to keep this unit cool. And as long as the blades are moving, even if it's standing still on the ground, it's pumping air around that air unit and it will not overheat. So something to keep in mind. But overall, I think the build quality is really excellent. I still do not like where the SD card is placed. I think the SD card placement is the dumbest thing, the dumbest decision that they have made. It's just, you got to have like a cocaine nail to get that door open. And even when you get it open, if you have some meat paws, if you got some big old, hot dog hands, fingers, you're not gonna get your fingers in there to get that SD card out. I know a lot of guys are like, I can't get my finger in there. Well, that's what she said. But it is a problem. It's a problem. It's hard to get in and out of there. I've seen a lot of people just leave the SD card in there and they just use a right angle USB and they just read directly off the card, power on the Avata, read it, and they just leave the card in there basically internally, and that's perfectly fine. You'll also notice I have orange props on one and the standard stock black props on the other. Now, what does this do? Does this create any sort of performance enhancement? No, it doesn't, but it does look cool as shit. Orange and white just screams 51 drones. It does. It just screams 51 drones. And every time I fly with my orange and white props, or my orange and white setup here, I just feel like Russ is with me. That's creepy. But no, the orange props, while it does not give you any performance enhancements, I do feel like the orange props are a bit stronger. A couple of times I've hit the prop guards and I found that the props did not shear off. However, these stock props, I find that they shear off a little bit easier than the orange props do. So if you're looking for a prop that is a little bit more durable, I would highly recommend that you check out these Drone Tech props. Link will be in the description below where you can check them out. But beyond just looking cool and being easy to spot, if you crash this, they do seem a little bit more durable. So that is something to think about. All right. Last thing I want to touch on the build quality is the fact that, yes, the Avata can easily eject the battery if you have a hard crash. This was something that started happening about 2 weeks after the Avata release. When people were crashing, they were finding that when they found their Avata, their battery was ejected. Now, this is not something exclusive to the DJI Avata. Any drone can eject the battery if it hits something hard enough. If it hits something hard enough, it will eject the battery. It's just whether or not the drone will be able to get back up after you have a hard crash. Luckily enough, the Avata is built very well. And as long as the battery stays in there, one, you'll be able to find it. And two, you may be able to turtle out of a crash if you're lucky enough. But at the very least, you do want to keep that battery in there so you can at least run the beeper, so you can at least find it if it's stuck in tall grass. I didn't have this problem until about, like, I want to say 4.5, 5 weeks ago. I was flying super, super low, slammed it into the grass, flipped it over, battery went sailing. And I found the drone because I had my ribbed riders on at the time and they were yellow, so they stuck out like a sore thumb, but I couldn't find the battery. And I got so pissed after searching for an hour, I went home. I ordered another battery. I went back to the same location the next day and started walking in like grids, and I finally found the battery. And it was after that day, I was like, all right, I got to figure out a solution, got to make a battery strap. Now, you can use anything you want to strap this in. I've seen people use Velcro. I've seen people use actual battery straps from other quads, and they strap it right here on the side and they wrap it around the back. Whatever you choose to hold your battery in is a great idea. Just use a battery strap. If you want to use a built battery strap from Etsy, there are multiple people that are selling battery straps on Etsy. I've made my own. It's called a jock strap. It just sort of slides and locks in place just like that, and it works fine. Whatever way you feel comfortable locking your battery in, find it, use it, but I definitely encourage you to strap your battery down under each flight, because if you have a hard crash, it's definitely going to go sailing. It's happened too many times to me recently, and I'm glad that I started strapping it in, because at first it wasn't happening, but after having a few crashes, that battery does come out a little bit easier. And the more you use these batteries, the easier it's going to be for that battery to eject. So keep that in mind. Alrighty, let's talk about the flyability and the overall flight characteristics after 90 days, because this is probably more of the dicier conversation that we're gonna have. All right, so flight characteristics. How is it? What do I think? Well, after having 200 plus flights with this, I can honestly say it flies pretty damn well. I like it a lot better than the DJI FPV drone, but at the end of the day, it's a Cinewhoop. It flies a lot like a Cinewhoop. Is it top heavy? Yeah, you betcha. That battery, that ion battery, it is noticeable. So it is very top heavy. And it is easy for this thing to go into a tumble if you are not careful. That is not necessarily something that can be prevented with software. So don't think that, oh, it's something DJI will just put software out It is just the nature of the beast when it comes to Cinewhoops. Does it happen to everybody? No. Like I said, I had about 130 flights before this even became a thing, like before everybody was fighting over this tumble and this yaw issue that the Avata had. I didn't even know anything about it because I was just flying it like I normally fly my Cinewhoops. And guess what? I had no problems. And I bet you if you weren't somebody who is following anybody on the internet or paying attention to YouTube, you probably wouldn't have noticed any issues either. Out of probably 100,000 of these units sold, if there are 100 issues with 100 units and 100,000 sold, that is a damn good number for when it comes to defects, if there are defects. There is no batch 2 of Avata. There's no batch 2. There's no batch 1. There's no batch 2. There's just the Avata. And I tell you that with confidence because we sell drones at DroneWorks. We get to see all the information. We get the communications from DJI when products are released or if there's anything that needs to be recalled. None of that's been said. So I'm just telling you from experience that yes, they will eventually probably push out a firmware update that will improve the performance, but will it always make it to where it will never happen again? I can't say that because when you look at a lot of these flights and you see what some of these people are doing, it is just honestly ID10T. And if you don't know what ID10T is, grab a pen and paper, write it down. I'll wait. Oh, you figured it out. Good. Well, now that I've spelled that out for you, you shouldn't have any problems with crashing your Avata. Just fly it like a normal Cinewhoop and you won't have any problems. At the end of the day, if I'll say it like this for you. Don't be Philly. All right, but all seriousness, I have had no problems. I think it flies great. The only real thing I did to this to make it fly better was to adjust my rates. So that was the only thing I felt like I needed to do because I felt like this was just a little bit too twitchy. And yeah, that was really it. But I adjust the rates to make them slower, to make it a little bit more mushy. That's what I am familiar with when flying. And I felt like that was what worked best for me. So, but you may be different. So adjust the rates to your personal touch. Rates are a very personal thing, but at least you can try what I have as a starting point and see if it works for you. But I think the way it flies perfectly fine. All right, let's talk about the Goggles 2 now. All right, these are the Goggles 2. And they are probably one of the most frustrating things about the Avata release. And this too has been very controversial. First off, they didn't make these initially backwards compatible with the older Air units. So because they were not backwards compatible with the older Air units, a lot of people got really pissed. They started this petition to get DJI to make these compatible, and DJI came out and said that they would make them compatible in December. Sometime in December, these will be compatible with the older Air units. I don't know how good it's going to work, but they are going to make it compatible, so there's that. These are smaller than the older version, which are the V2 goggles. So, I mean, that's a great thing. For travel, these are super, super easy to travel. I love how it fits in the bag. It really doesn't take up a lot of space. So one plus side to the Goggles 2 is the fact that it is easy to travel with. When I first reviewed this, I thought that these antennas did not come out, but they do come out, and they come out just by pulling them straight up, which I guess, when I was reviewing this, I wouldn't have thought to just pull them straight up and out. And I guess I didn't think to do that because I didn't want to break them. It's just not like, it's not natural to pull something straight up and out like an antenna, but they do pop in and out. So eventually, hopefully, maybe we'll see some upgraded antennas for these. Not that you really need it. I feel like the range is perfectly fine with these. I mean, all in all, these did great. I had not had any issues with them overheating. However, while we were in Las Vegas, I did witness a friend of mine and Billy's goggles overheat while we were out there. So the potential of these things overheating are a problem. The other thing I was having issues with was the goggles fogging up. In the dead of summer, like August, September, it's pretty humid in Florida and the goggles were fogging up. Now there is a fan in these goggles, but the fan's job is to keep the goggles cooling. But the problem is that this fan is just not powerful enough to do anything to be an anti-fog mechanism for these goggles, which sort of sucks. So my recommendation is get some diver spit, put some diver spit in here, and that will help mitigate some of that fogging. I wish I would have knew this earlier, that was, not really a thing in these goggles. Like there was really no anti-fog. But that is one of the biggest drawbacks. I still like my V2 goggles because they never fog up and they are a lot more comfortable. Also, this foam here sort of sucks. I've been waiting for somebody to create a better foam for this. This foam is more of a leather and it just sort of clips into place. This thing right here really sort of pushes down on the bridge of my nose quite heavily. And you can see it's wearing pretty hard here because that's where it sort of grinds into the ridge of my nose. I wish that this was a little bit more contoured so it fit my face a little bit better. If you have a super flat face, you probably won't have any problems with this. Like this probably is like a non-issue for you. But for me and probably for others, I've seen a handful of people really complaining about how these goggles too fit. Like it's not a huge deal. It's just something that's annoying because there are some light leaks here and these goggles are so small and there's just no options. This foam is more of a pleather foam and it's just not comfortable. And I've looked pretty much everywhere for replacement foam. So if you know of any foam that you've tried, like a direct fit replacement to this, please, by all means, drop me a link in the comments. I would love to try it because that's probably the most aggravating thing about this. I did go ahead and make a battery holder for these goggles that are specific to this. I've been using that since day one, and it just keeps everything nice and tidy. I do like that the battery life is better on these, and I also like that we have this little touch screen here. I didn't think I would like the touch screen, but I actually really like the touch screen. It works really well. The diopter adjustments are fantastic, which make it easier to see one image. If you run a prescription set of glasses, it just works great. There's also a headphone jack and the SD card right here. And all of it, I feel like, make these goggles definitely worth it. And it's not, I'd be remiss to mention the fact that the screens on this are so much better than the screens on the V2 goggles. So if you're buying these for anything, you're buying this for that OLED experience. That is the big reason why you are buying these goggles. So yeah, I really like them. There are some, like I said, there are some drawbacks, some things I don't like about them, but I think the pros outweigh the cons on the V2 or the goggles 2. God, I also don't like the name of them. Goggles 2. I wish we would call these something like Goggles Slim or something. All right, let's talk about piloting the Avata and the FPV controller 2. All right, so when DJI sent this out to me to review, they also sent me the FPV controller 2. Now, I already had the FPV controller 2 from having the DJI FPV drone. Now, when they sent us these, we had no idea that these would be sold without the controller. And it really put egg on our face as reviewers because we're reviewing these thinking, oh, you could just buy the FPV controller too. Little did we know you couldn't buy this controller, and it just made us look like idiots because we just thought, oh, well, you could buy this, you can get this, and what's your problem? And the fact of the matter was that these controllers were out of stock for so long, you could not get them. And a lot of people were really pissed that they weren't selling a bundle. They were pushing off this e-wanker, this motion wanker. They wanted you to buy the motion wanker. Nobody wants the motion wanker. I don't want the motion wanker. What did I break? I don't want the motion wanker. I wanted this, and this is how I have flown the DJI Avata since day one. I don't like the motion controller, never have been a fan of it. And now that these are becoming in stock again and becoming available, I would highly recommend get yourself this. It changes the experience, it changes your precision. You just have a better time. Now, there are some people that love flying with the motion wanker, and I'm not here to argue with those people. If you want to wank and fly, by all means, do what's best for you. But for me, I'm gonna enjoy using the FPV controller too. I think this thing works fantastically. And I love the small size of it. For me, it reminds me a lot of the Tango 2. So because it's so familiar, it was an easy adjustment to be able to fly this with the Avata. So I'm gonna continue using this. The only thing I wish this had that my Tango had was the foldable gimbals, like where I can pull it out and fold them down to the side. I gotta take the sticks out of here each time, which not terrible. It's just not super ideal. Is that, you got to take the sticks out, put them off this, and if I lose one or drop one, then I'm sitting there searching in the ground for my sticks, which I've done that a few times in the past. But it does make it easy to travel with the goggles too in this little small controller versus like my Mambo, which is, yeah. Anyways, That's something that I have enjoyed. All right, let's talk about battery life on the Avata over 3 months' time. All right, so when I first started flying the Avata, I was flying with the stock motors. I didn't do any motor changes, no adjustments to it whatsoever. And my battery life in manual mode was about 12.5 to 13 minutes of flight time. And I thought that was pretty excellent. Now keep in mind, I am coming from flying standard Cinewhoops. I'm flying Chendrone Squirts, Terraplanes, where my battery life is like 5 minutes or less. And because I'm coming from 5 minutes or less in battery life, when we start talking about 14 minutes or 12 minutes or even 11 minutes, hell, even 9 minutes of battery life, that is a huge improvement. So I can understand some of the people coming from a Mavic to the Avata, their disappointment with 10 minutes or even 11 minutes of battery life. But don't let that discourage you, because just know that most Cinewhoops are not going to be able to achieve even that great of a battery life. So to have 10 minutes of flight time, I think is pretty exceptional. And honestly, these batteries charge pretty quickly. They are expensive. It is expensive. I get it. If you fly standard FPV, you're able to buy a battery for 25, 30 bucks. Some of us spend a little less on batteries. Some of us spend a little bit more. But being somebody that comes from the world of DJI drones and drones, GPS drones in general, I have been accustomed to spending 180, 200 bucks on batteries for Inspires, my Evos, even Skydio for a long time. So for me, I'm used to it, but I understand how if you are in the FPV realm and that's all you've ever known, to spend 169 bucks on one of these is a gut punch. So I would recommend that you get the Fly More kit, because one battery is just not gonna be enough to fly. You need at least 3 batteries to really enjoy the Avata. And I think that the battery life on this is actually pretty damn good. Now, with that being said, if you do take on the task of upgrading your motors, bye-bye battery life, because it will be cut in half by at least a good 20% or more, depending on how you're flying. I went from 11 minutes in manual flight to about 8.5, 9 minutes in manual flight after I changed the batteries out, the motors out. So not really the best, but I mean, I expected that I was putting a larger motor, higher KV, bigger stator. I knew what I was going to achieve by putting that on there. So I chose performance over efficiency. So that is something that you will have to decide as well. Do you want efficiency or do you want performance out of your quad? I chose performance, and well, you get what you get. It's just like a fast car. It's gonna burn through gas a lot quicker if you have a larger motor inside of it. So it's the easiest way to compare that. All right, let's talk about the camera quality on the Avata. All right, so the camera quality on the Avata, I think, is pretty much my most favorite thing about this drone. Throughout the course of 90 days, I have brought this all over the place, from Las Vegas to Georgia. I've flown it multiple locations here in Florida. And I gotta say, the camera quality is absolutely incredible, incredible. 4K 60 looks amazing. And to be able to have the option to utilize D-Log, which the color science on this camera and the overall exposure is much better than the FPV drone, it just makes for a great experience. However, with that being said, not having optional frame rates is a big bummer. Most all of my videos are edited in 4K 30 frames per second for YouTube. When I take 4K 60 and throw it into a 4K timeline, sometimes I will tend to get stutters or little jitters that just looks weird. So it makes it hard for me to mismatch footage. I find myself having to speed up footage ever so slightly to make up for those jitters when it comes to using 4K video. A lot of people ask, well, why would I want to put a GoPro on top of the Avata? And I think people will always want to put action cameras on top of the Avata because it does not offer additional frame rates. You're locked at 60 frames per second. So until DJI changes that, I don't think people will stop putting action cameras on top of their drones. They like the idea of the enhanced security and the overall reliability, but they want the flexibility of different frame rates. I understand why we don't have flexible frame rates, because it is also the FPV camera, but in the same token, I mean, not a lot of people are just uploading 4K 60 videos. I mean, you can. If you upload 4K 60, it does look amazing. But overall, my experience with this, I have been very, very happy with the colors and the captures I've been able to get out of the Avata over the past 90 days. I have zero complaints with it. In Vegas, I would fly with no stabilization, 16:9, and I would post-stabilize with GyroFlow, do some light color corrections. I used an ND32 for the entire time I was out there flying, and I think it did absolutely phenomenal. All the videos I did look great. I had zero complaints. And I mean, while it's still not better than a GoPro camera, I think it is more than passable for a drone this size. And you just sort of have to try it and see if it's something you like. And if you don't like it, well, then you have options. Like I said, people are mounting Hero 10 bones on top of here. They're mounting full-size GoPros on top of these. So you have options. You're not just limited. And I think that's the most exciting thing about the Avata, not being limited to just one thing. Just because you're not supposed to do something and it's technically a bad idea doesn't mean you can't. So the camera for me is definitely a huge win and a big upgrade. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this video up with some miscellaneous items. All right, so when I made the video talking about the top 5 things I like and the top 5 things I hate, some people ask me, well, what about the noise? Well, the noise, again, the noise doesn't bother me. This is a Cinewhoop, and while this is very loud, if you've never heard of the iFlight Hornet or the iFlight Bumblebee, wow, that was probably one of the loudest Cinewhoops I have ever flown in my life. So as far as the noise goes, I don't feel like this is a super, super annoying Cinewhoop. I feel like there's way more annoying Cinewhoops. But at the end of the day, this is not something that's meant to be flown stealthy. You are going to know this is coming. You're going to know that this is in a neighborhood or at a park. My recommendation for you is either embrace it or find something else, because it's a drone, it has props, they spin, it's going to make noise. Sorry. This is not an anti-Karen drone. This will draw all the Karens to your yard, and they're going to know whether or not your milkshake tastes good or not. That was terrible. That was a terrible analogy. The second thing was I totally missed the fact, like I said, about the FPV controller. If I had to think about that video again, I would have totally bitched out DJI up and down about not being able to have that FPV controller 2 available at launch. I think that was a huge miss, and it was something that should have been included right from the jump, was to have that FPV controller 2. I think that was a pretty huge miss and something that a lot of people were pretty upset about. But again, now you can buy it. It's just still not something that's bundleable. Fuck it, I'm not even gonna try to make that word. It's just not in a bundle. So you can buy it separately when it becomes available. But yeah, I think that was a huge miss. And then obviously the last piece of this is the fact that I wish it did have the additional frame rates, but it doesn't. I talked about that in the camera section of this. It doesn't have the additional frame rates. I wish it did, but it doesn't. And it's just something that you have to deal with. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about that. There is no additional frame rates, so it is what it is. But overall, do I give the Avata a thumbs up or thumbs down after 90 days? I think it's pretty clear. I like this drone. I'm gonna give it a thumbs up and a stamp of approval. I don't see enough of issues, and especially for myself who fly this every day. I'm not jumping on hype bandwagons about these things falling out of the air, because I'm just not seeing enough of it. When I look around the internet and see the people that are having the issues, I look at their track records. I look at how they actually fly. Do they do this for a living? Are they flying every single day? I come across as arrogant and a prick and a dickhead online, but if you knew what I do every single day, you would understand my standpoint on this. I'm not an influencer. I'm not a role model. I'm not a creator. I'm a guy that creates internet videos, but I also do this for a living every day. And to me, this is a tool. And if I did not feel like this tool was capable enough to make me money outside of YouTube, and if it was not good enough for my clients, I wouldn't be giving it a green light. And for me, this tool is more than capable enough, and it is a great beginner Cinewhoop, and it is a very useful and powerful utility. Again, look at the track records of the people that are telling you whether or not you should or should not buy something, and understand what their motive is behind that. What is their financial gain behind that? Do they have the experience to tell you whether or not something's good or bad? I do this professionally. I'm not here trying to blow smoke up your ass. I don't give a fuck if you hit subscribe. I don't give a shit if you like me. At the end of the day, my bank account does not depend on YouTube. I'm an asshole. I'm proud to be an asshole, and if you want to join that asshole army, not in my asshole, but the asshole army, you can hit subscribe and make your own decision. I'm not telling you to buy it. I'm just saying I'm giving it a thumbs up. and fuck everybody else. Stay original.
I heard they checking for me, no one checking on me, so I had to go run up a check. I got the message on me, ain't no flexing on me, my attorney gon' call and collect. Blessings on blessings for me, my successes only made them envious, they got upset. I had to put all their egos in check. I want the money, the power, respect, and I heard you my so-and-so.